Hi, TEDxers. Hi, Kiza, Simone, Mary. I'm Bianca DeJesus, and I'm the Learning Specialist on the TEDx team. And this year, as Caroline said, I have the honor of co-hosting TEDWomen alongside Pat Mitchell, Curator and Editorial Director of TEDWomen. So TEDWomen offers us a time to connect, watch a program of incredible speakers, and have daring discussions about the future. This year, the conference will take place virtually and it will be a little different than previous years, as you might expect. So this year, TEDx is deeply woven into the fabric of TEDWomen. This year's conference will feature talks from 5 TEDx Women Anchor events. So each of these teams has curated talks that will be live streamed alongside several talks curated by TED's curation team. In today's Hangout, along with Pat Mitchell and Helen Walters, Head of Curation at TED, we'll hear from Safra Anver of TEDx Colombo, Kita Deming of TEDx Port of Spain, Kirsty DeGaris of TEDx Sydney, Grace Yang of TEDx Montreal Women, and Mercy Akamo from TEDx Lagos. We'll hear all about the speakers that they've selected for this year's conference and what they're looking forward to. So why are we here? During today's Hangout, each of these guests will share an exciting preview of what's to come for TEDWomen this year, specifically the programming elements and the curation that everyone put into the event. So including the unique challenges that we're facing this year in preparing for the conference. So first, we'll watch a pre-recorded interview with 5 TEDx anchors. We recorded this interview in advance because everyone is in a different time zone, but we really wanted to hear the perspective of each of these organizers. So we made it a point to be able to speak with them and bring them on. And then, so first we'll watch that interview, and then we'll dig into the interview with Helen and Pat. And then after, we'll watch a second rendition of this interview with another question that we have for them. And then we'll open the Q&A. And in the Q&A, feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat, starting from the very beginning of the conversation. But in the Q&A, you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions of Helen, Pat, or any of the organizers I mentioned. Mercy's here, Keita's here, Grace. So if you have any Grace is here. So if you have any questions to relay to them, we can do so. And then before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that TEDxWomen applications are still open. So please feel free to sign up. You still have a bit more time. A ton of organizers have already signed up. It's shaping up to be something that's really incredible. So if you'd like to be a part of it, we'll drop a link in the chat and you can follow through there. So let's dive into the first clip with the TEDx anchors. And then after, I'll bring on Helen and Pat. So roll the tape. Hi, everyone. We're so glad to have all of you here on this call. We have Mercy from TEDx Lagos. We have Kirsty from TEDx Sydney. We have Safra from TEDx Colombo, Grace from TEDx Montreal Women, and Kita from TEDx Port of Spain. It's great to have all of you with us here today. My first question to you is, could you give us a preview of the speaker that you selected for this year's conference and how they embody the theme of Fearless?
Thank you so much, Bianca. Our speaker, Dr. Kemi Da Silva, she's a very, very interesting person. She's actually a women's health specialist based in Nigeria, specifically Lagos. She's been able to do so much in her span of her 9-to-5 career, which is she's a gynecologist. But beyond her 9-to-5, she actually created a foundation that focuses on women's issues, especially as regards gender-based violence. So I'm really, really happy to actually have her speak for a huge number of reasons. But for me, because she really embodies what the theme for this year's TEDWomen is, which is fearless. As regards gender-based violence in Nigeria, there's so much that has actually been happening. So much, a lot of terrible things that has been happening. However, it actually came nothing close to what actually happened this year, 2020. Because of the pandemic. So I don't want to really go so much into her talk because I feel like I'll be diverging too much information, because I really, really want you to watch. But I think beyond the issue, I'm very, very happy that not only are we spotlighting the issue, she's also going to be able to share the things that her organization was able to do to try to help in this situation, not just during the pandemic, but also as regards the shadow pandemic. So I'm really excited about having her speak this year at TEDWomen 2020.
I'm introducing you to our speaker, which is Jayashree Matha. So she embodies fearlessness in the fact that she had an amazing career ahead of her. She had everything that you can imagine going ahead for her. And then suddenly, with a dramatic experience, she decided that she would let it all go, which is extremely difficult. And she fearlessly went through the transformation of becoming a New Age monk. And through this, she's learned a simple trait which each and every one of us can have to actually live a happy and content life. So I hope her one point of action can help you in the very future.
Hi, it's Kirsty here from TEDx Sydney. Our speaker at TEDWomen in 2020 is Jamila Gordon. She embodies fearlessness, which is the theme of this year's event, because she has taken every challenge in her life and turned it into an opportunity. She came to Australia as a refugee from Somalia. She'd fled significant violence in that country and made it to Australia. And she graduated as a software engineer and works in AI, but she started off working in supply chain transparency and went on to see that there is so much more that AI can do. So I'm so excited about our speaker. She is an extraordinary woman.
The speaker that's representing TEDx Montreal Women is Regional Chief Kluani Adamek. We're really pleased to be able to bring an Indigenous voice to TEDWomen 2020. The world is waking up to the wisdom and the knowledge of Indigenous peoples. And the speaker that we are bringing forth is a regional chief at the Assembly of First Nations. So she'll be talking about the importance of women's leadership from an indigenous standpoint. And also she'll be referring to reciprocity and the importance of relating to the land, the relationship to the land.
We chose the speaker Angelique Barisot Potter, and we chose her because she was talking about the theme of open secrets, and she's a lawyer. She's hired to come into companies and make sure that integrity is happening and people are not being corrupt, and there's transparency. And she had this experience where she was doing what she was told to do, yet she was being punished or, in fact, fired for her job. And we felt that with somebody who was talking about open secrets, to really encapsulate a talk that demonstrated what she was talking about and she lived through that experience, we felt it was very meaningful to be able to share that talk under the context of Fearless. It's the part where she talks about having to pretend to her daughters to go to work for 6 months because she was pretending to have a job. And that part was really difficult for her. And I feel like the word fearless, especially in a year of, or era of Me Too and women's rights, that talk felt like it was right for us, and the timing was perfect for her to be featured on the TEDWomen stage.
Wow. So each of those talks will be so unique and important at this moment in time. And we're so grateful to have each of these speakers grace the stage. So now we have Helen Walters, Head of Curation at TED, and Pat Mitchell, Curator and Editorial Director of TEDWomen, here to talk through curation this year. So they've been hard at work, as you can imagine, in preparing the conference. So thank you both for joining us here today. We are so grateful to have you on this call and to share a preview of what's to come. So Helen, how are you feeling?
Well, I'm so excited, and not least because I'm seeing so many familiar faces. And for those of you I know or don't know, just hi, everybody. You guys are amazing. I'm so glad to be here. And what an amazing event we have in store for you. And not least because of those amazing, your fellow organizers. And Mercy, Kita, Safra, hi. I can't see everybody. My grid is not big enough and I'm not quick enough, but a hi to everybody. Oh, Grace. Sorry, I'm excited. Can you tell?
And Pat, how are you feeling today?
Excitement. And I'm remembering too, seeing so many of these faces, that over the 9 years now that we've been doing TEDWomen, TEDx community has always been so involved. And we used to get together at the TED conferences and have these, we'd get ideas and for themes and all other kinds of things from the TEDx community. And the TEDxWomen community has shown up year after year and been such an important part of the TED Women global community. So wonderful to see your faces. It's been a really special experience to go about the curation this year in the way that we've done it, to work very closely with these 5 TEDx organizers, and hoping that the result will be something that each and every one of you will be as excited about as we are.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And Pat, my first question is actually for you. So we've just seen a behind the scenes look at the curation of TED Women this year from our 5 TEDx Women anchors. And could you tell us a little bit about what makes the TED Women community really unique and special this year?
Well, you know, even before there was a pandemic, because TED Women in 2019 was in December, and we stood on the stage, Helen and myself and Kelly, and we talked about an innovative plan that we wanted to put into place for 2020, which was that we would co-curate TED Women with global TEDx women organizers and curators. And in doing that, we would really have almost a virtual experience anyway. And this was before we all knew that we would start to live and work virtually entirely. So it's unique this year in that it is all virtual. It's unique in that all the talks are recorded, and that of course has led all of us to face challenges we didn't have before in figuring out how you get equipment and things, you know, to people so they can do their talks wherever they are in the world. And but I think that's also going to add a great deal to the diversity of the way things look and feel and are as people are in their own places. And of course, it's very unique because 5 of the 15 speakers were selected by, curated, managed, filmed with the TEDx Women organizers and curators.
Absolutely. I think there's so many things that make this year really special. And Helen, at a time when the world can seem really fragmented, what are some of the ways that TED is bringing together this global community that Pat is talking about, this really, you know, diverse set of speakers, attendees, audience members?
So one of the things that we've learned this year, and at this point, we've done a few experiments with kind of virtual conferences, which, you know, we've all had to pivot, as the phrase has it, pretty sharply. And one of the things that's the most important is what's happening kind of off stage. So we have our speakers, and we've worked so hard, and so many, we have 5 organizers here who can attest to how hard we've worked to make these talks really beautiful. Just as much work is going into making the entire day and actually the pre-conference and everything around the conference just as compelling and connecting as the talks themselves will be these kind of sparks for conversation. TED, you know, we don't always make things easy for ourselves, and we decided in our infinite wisdom that we would develop our own virtual platform for conferences. We looked at everything that was around, and there's some fine things, but, you know, fine, who wants fine? We're not content with fine. So we decided that we would build TED Live Plus, we're calling it, and within TED Live Plus, there are various different experiences that the community can have. So there's everything from the kind of the conversation thread that will run all day, and that is just open for attendees to just connect with one another. There's obviously, we still have TED Connect connected to this event, so people can direct message via this platform too. We also have just a kick-ass discovery session setup and plan. You know, in the old days when we would meet in person, the discovery sessions were where smaller groups of people could get together to commune and communicate and chat and kind of have an informal and yet structured way to talk to each other and get to know each other. And we figured out ways that we can do that at this event too, in a virtual way. And we have some amazing offerings. I'm just thinking of a couple, but Elizabeth Lesser, who spoke at TED Women a few years ago, she's going to be coming and she's going to be talking about the stories and myths about women that define how we see ourselves and are seen. We also have a talk about how to disagree productively, which I think is something that we all need a kind of a lessons in these days. And we also have things like a dance and movement class from the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theatre. So they're going to kind of, you know, it's a mixture of the heady and the cerebral, but also just the getting out of your seat and getting out of your kind of, you know, your getting out of this mode that we're in so often, which is staring into a camera or into a computer. And that's just really important for us. TEDWomen is always about the community. It's always about, it's really not about, the magic happens when people connect to what we kind of put out as the talks and as the speakers, but then the magic happens kind of in between those moments. And I'm excited for us to keep experimenting and keep innovating and keep trying to bring everybody together in new and interesting ways.
That sounds so excellent. I mean, so many wonderful ways for people to connect. So thank you so much for that. And then I'm also wondering, so this year we're tackling the theme of fearless. So for both of you, could you tell us about this theme and why it was selected this year?
Well, it's one of my favorite words, as Helen knows. And, but we did actually.
We wouldn't let Pat go with dangerous, just for the record.
That's right. She said, no, you can't do dangerous. So, but it was actually co-curated, as was the program, because we asked each of these 5 TEDx women organizers who are our partners in this year TEDWomen. We asked them, we put a list, you know, some names forward. They sent in ideas, and over a period of time, back and forth and thinking through themes, we ended up with this one. It felt right for the times. We are living in dangerous times, as we all know, are certainly unprecedented times. And it takes a kind of fearlessness to deal with the change, to pivot, as Helen said, to other ways of working and living. And what's been interesting, and you know this well, all of you, from choosing themes, is that sometimes speakers get obsessed with the theme and they really want to just talk about fearless, and then you'd end up with 15 talks about fearless and so you have to find that balance between the theme being an inspirational, motivational idea that becomes part of their story and their idea, and it becoming the complete focus and emphasis. So Helen and I have worked our way with the other TEDx women organizers in dealing with that. But the thing that I loved about this is I thought, in putting forth fearless as an idea, that I really understood it, because I would describe myself as sometimes fearless, not always. And I would certainly think I could say who I thought was fearless. But what we've learned from each of these talks is that we've got whole new definitions of this word. People really came at it thinking it doesn't just mean putting aside fear or not being fear. I mean, you know, all the ways that we could define it. We have a lot of different ways in these TED Talks. Fearless is going to take on a lot of new, and I think significant definitions for all of us.
For sure. And
Helen, you have.
Sure. Helen, do you have any thoughts on
No,
this?
I don't have much to add to that. I mean, Pat nailed it. Pat and I have this real problem of just agreeing with each other incessantly. So when we disagree, it's really weird, but it doesn't happen very often, which may be a problem. But I'm really interested in this theme. It could be one note, and it just isn't. And the way that people have responded to it, and the way that people have come at it, and the diversity of the ideas that we have on the program is just kind of breathtaking. You know, it's always an interesting process. I think that's why we all come back and keep doing this, right? Like, it's never the same. The context of your existence, your reality is different every time you're coming to curate a new conference. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. And you know, these are, I can't bear the phrase unprecedented times. It's such a cliche at this point. But at the same time, I mean, it really is the description for where we are and how are we going to get out of that? And for me, TED is about the ways that we get out of things. It's the way that we, you know, not necessarily solve a problem in a kind of a neat bow. You know, the things that we talk about are complex and they are long lasting and far reaching, and they're going to take more than one approach, undoubtedly. But, you know, the quality that everybody is going to need is a dash of fearlessness to take the plunge and to do something. And I think that kind of exemplifies and embodies what we're trying to get at with TED Talks. And so it's been for me, a super fascinating and provocative theme to curate too.
I fully agree. That's so beautiful. And I mean, on this journey, what challenges have you faced? I'm sure there hasn't been any at all. So
plain sailing, Bianca. I mean, just
right.
Piece of cake, right? I mean, the reality is that we are, TED and you guys, like, we're really good at filming talks that are given on a stage that, you know, a speaker, we prepare our speaker for a moment, you know, and that moment is on the stage. And then, you know, we introduce them and we let them go onto the stage, and then we go and we hold our breath, you know, until they're done. And then, you know, there's kind of nothing to be done at that point. When you're filming in a virtual world, and so you're pre-filming everything, because we knew we didn't want a conference that was like a whole bunch of Zoom boxes where people are just kind of chatting. We knew that we needed higher production values than that. But production, it turns out, is a real skill. And Pat knows this from her years in television, but, you know, that's not something that many people on the TED team have necessarily had to do before. And so we really, I mean, talk about a pivot. We really had to change our internal processes and the way that we even think about talks. And I'll just share one thing that kind of, it blew my mind, because it caused such a change in the way that I think about talks and talk to speakers about talks, and it's to do with graphics. So it's super nerdy, and not apologize for that. But I'd spend a lot of time talking to speakers about graphics or slides, when to use them, when not to use them. And I was really clear on my advice, which was basically don't use them unless they are really necessary, and unless they are like completely essential to the audience understanding your point. Basically don't use them, because what you're doing is you're splitting people's attention, and we want people to be looking at you. We want people to be watching you on the stage, and we want people to be focused on what you're saying. Don't divide their attention. Now, in this world, that's almost the opposite, where it's like, how can we make we actually, you know, and you don't want to go to cheeseball land. Like we don't want to be making kind of like bad television. You know, we want to make things that are still going to capture people's attention. It's all to say we now are thinking about B-roll, and we're thinking about other things that we can cut in to give a sense of place or a sense of context. We're filming in people's homes. Like, we don't have the control of the environment anymore. How do we make this look as sumptuous and lustrous as TED Talks traditionally are? And so it's been a real learning curve for us, and we've learned a lot from Pat, and we've learned on Pat's experience in broadcast over many years. But for me, that has been a huge challenge, and I think it's been one that we have risen to with gusto.
Well, I do like to think my media career has some value here, but here's the difference.
Well,
but here's the difference, and to your point, Helen, that we have sort of broken some of the rules of the kind of straight TED Talk, because we have felt the need to bring in both the cultures where these speakers are, as well as anything that kind of adds to the narrative that they're telling. But the other challenge, which, and those are, you know, just typical television media devices to use, but we're doing this in environments where people can't get the right equipment, where they can't have professional crews, in most instances, walk in and set up a camera and put on a mic and do it professionally. I mean, I did an interview with an astronaut who's in a training facility in Russia. And she couldn't even move her cameras because everywhere she would move, her computer would show some top secret machine or something or the other. So, and we had trouble using her server because the national security was like blocking, the footage. So I'm seeing it thinking, now this is a new one. And it seems like on every talk we've had that kind of moment of, oh, hadn't anticipated that, right? We have two speakers who speak together and they're in time zones 10 hours apart. Now trying to find a time that worked for both of them to be on camera doing a talk
that was exciting.
It was exciting, right? It was 6 a.m. for us, if I remember correctly.
It was. We had our cameras off.
Yeah, definitely.
It's amazing when you really put it all together and see what everyone is working on. It's really incredible. It's an amazing feat, and it never ceases to amaze me, really. And Pat, who are some of the fearless speakers that you're looking forward to seeing this year? I know there are so many, but if you could just name a few that you're really excited for.
Well, I can't choose among children, which one you love the most. And when it comes to TED speakers, I always I anticipate every one of them is going to be the best that was there. But I'm excited about a Ghanaian poet that that I met through some other work, and I didn't realize she was a poet. And then I happened to see a video of her reading her poetry, and Helen and I both blown away. And so she composed a poem for us on Fearless. And she'll begin and end the conference. And I'm tremendously excited about introducing of the world outside of Ghana. She's very well known in Ghana, as it turns out. And then, of course, Helen, and I should let you talk about Svetlana, because we are really honored to have this speaker. And Helen, it was your discovery, it was your persistence. So I'll let you pick up with Svetlana.
So Svetlana Tikhanovskaya is the elected leader of Belarus, who is now in exile in Vilnius. And, we've been watching the news, we've been seeing, the election news come in and seeing the story we're seeing her story, reading her story. Her husband was running to be president. He was arrested by officials and put in jail, so he was no longer able to run. And so she decided to run in his place. And I remember reading something and just there was a comment in there where she was just like, I don't want to do this. I'm a mom. I want to be a mom and I want to be a wife. I don't want to run for office. The reality is that she swept the election, we think. She was given 10% of the vote and then kind of forced into exile. And she continues to agitate and to lead the movement against this, Europe's last dictator. And so if anyone embodies this, the quality of fearlessness, it's her. And I'm so excited that she wrote for us a meditation on fearlessness, but she didn't just kind of rely on, the trite or the easy and just like, oh, it was hard. And then I pushed through. Like, she's really real in this talk. She's very vulnerable. And she's really I'm not going to spoil it for you. So I'm not going to tell you. So sorry, again, not sorry, but this is a beautiful, powerful, profound talk. And I am so proud that we got it. I will also give a shout out to our colleagues in TEDx Vilnius who just helped. Like, it's not easy for, I'm in Brooklyn. It turns out I don't have many contacts in Vilnius, but I do because of the TEDx community. And so Will connected me with the TEDx Vilnius organizers, who then kind of mobilized, helped us to put this together, and then provided us with the TED letters so that we really have captured, in this case, a TED talk. And I'm just you know, it sounds trite to be like humbled by that, but I really am. I really think that there isn't another organization in the world that could pull that off. And I'm so grateful and I'm so proud of that talk and knowing the backstory, which no one will ever know, but I'm so proud of it. And I'm so excited for you all to see it.
Me too, and I'm so excited that we were able to share that story with the TEDxers, because I think it's something that TEDxers can relate to and really understand that global connectedness is so important, especially at a time like this. And so, Helen, how do you choose when? How do you know when a speaker is right for one conference versus another? So I can only imagine there were so many people that you could have chosen from for this particular conference. But what do you think differentiates your choices?
I mean, I think this is all part of the curation kind of secret sauce, or the kind of the way that we approach the conference. And in this regard, we, you know, we worked with the TEDx organizers first, because they had a kind of an earlier deadline than we did. And so we wanted to know who they were excited about and who they were excited about from their community, because we knew that those would be 5 spots in our conference. And we also knew that, you know, whereas in TEDWomen last year, I think we had 40 or 45 speakers. In this, we can only have 15. So we knew we had extremely limited spots. And so then it becomes a question of, well, what do we have and what do we need? You know, how are we going to round out this program? Because we really obviously don't want it to be one note where it's just a lot of people explaining why they're so fearless. You know, that would be super tedious. And so, you know, we have a process. We have a bunch. I think some of you have met some of our amazing specialist curators. There's David Biello, our science curator. Simone Ross is our technology curator. Corey Hagem is our business curator. And Chi Pullman is our design curator. Shout out to them. So kind of collectively, we worked, you know, they would bring us ideas. Pat and I would just try and kind of put this jigsaw puzzle together to make sure that we're hitting a bunch of different notes. And the reality is that you can put together an entirely different program for each conference. But what we do is we're looking at the time that we're in, the context of what's going on in the world, and where our audience is going to be. You know, what are people going to be looking for? How can we be, you know, in one sense, giving them kind of what they need, and then in another sense, giving them something completely surprising and unexpected, you know. And so there's a lot of things that go into putting together a complete program. And that for me is my most favorite thing in the entire world.
So beautiful. And this question is for both of you, actually. Could you tell us in what ways do you imagine TEDWomen will impact attendees this year? What is your greatest hope?
Well, I would start with the fact that we've already mentioned a couple of women leaders. Svetlana certainly being an example of a new, however reluctant, but very important woman leader who may in fact end up leading an entire revolution in government. But we do look at women's leadership with Julia Gillard, who was the first female prime minister of Australia, and Ngozi Iweala, who was a Nigerian finance minister and who may, we're hoping, become the head of the WTO. She's in the middle of campaigning. So we've looked at leadership in some different ways. And I think that those lessons are not for political leaders. The tips, the things they say are really good for all of us, wherever we might find ourselves in a position of leadership. So I think those talks will have wide appeal. And then we hear, as we often do, from people I think of as social justice warriors. You know, they're out there making changes, and they're making big decisions in their lives to do that. Renee Montgomery was a very famous basketball player in the US who walked away from this great career to devote herself to the work towards racial justice. And, you know, so hearing those stories, then brave women who are stepping up to get vaccines before they're approved, looking at all the different ways in which, again, fearless acts are facing challenges we hadn't expected, and how they go about doing that. I find, and a young businesswoman who has an unbelievable story about, you know, some challenges she faced and how she faced them. And of course, you heard from the TEDx women organizers about their remarkable speakers too. And one thing that Helen and I have struggled with, and I know if you're doing any kind of conference this year, but if you're in the US in particular, the election season has everyone on high anxiety here. And we really don't have any idea on November 12th exactly what the mood of this country might be, as well as the mood of other people around the world who are caught up in this struggle too, I think, and who are feeling some of the anxiety, as well as there's 77 other big elections going on around the world. So it's been a kind of election season. And so we're trying to not go into that place, but we did want an observation about it. And in particular, an observation about where are we on November 12th, looking forward, what does it mean? What does this election mean for the world's women? So we invited somebody who knows a lot about the world's women, having been a leader of them, and particularly in the US, a women's movement. Gloria Steinem will be doing a talk, which is close to live in that she's going to record it as close to the conference as possible. I saw somebody's hands go up. Yay. Thank you for that, Kat. I feel the same way. Ted's been interested in Gloria giving a TED talk for a long time. And so it's great that she's agreed to do this one and to write an observation about the US elections and what they mean for not just this country, but as we know, the impact they have around the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you both. I mean, I can talk to you for hours about this. This is so exciting. This is such an incredible moment that we find ourselves in. So it's been great to hear the insights from you two directly. And now we have our second pre-recorded interview that we'd like to play from the 5 TEDx anchors about what they're really looking forward to the attendees walking away with after this conference, and their greatest hopes for what they want people to really take with them in their hearts. So we can play that video now, and then we'll call you two back up for the Q&A. And if for attendees here, for the TEDxers, if you have any questions for Pat and Helen, feel free to post them in the chat and we'll float them up. So ready to go to the video. Thank you. Now that I have all of you here, I'm really curious, what is your greatest hope for the conference this year? If you were to name one thing that you want attendees to walk away with, what would that one thing be?
Thanks for that question, Bianca. So for me, I would say that my greatest hope for people going to, be part of this event is when people attend, watch the sessions. I'm hoping that their minds will be open, that they would be able to learn from different cultures, different perspectives from all the speakers. So I'm hoping that it's my prayer and also my hope that when people watch it, when people join each session, they are able to learn and they're also able to be mentally a lot more aware of what's happening around the world and have like a 360 type of knowledge, being impacted. So yes, I would say that's my greatest hope. Thank you.
This year, what I would love to see is that in this turbulent time, the people actually have hope, that people through all of that, what's happening, they're making a huge difference in their lives. These women who are up here on stage, or well, virtually in this case, actually have made such a huge difference, pandemic or no pandemic, and they're striving fearlessly to make the change they want to see. And to be able to look at that and implement it, to actually go out there and think of new and innovative ways to change their own communities, even in their smallest way, that's the biggest hope that I would say.
So what I would love to see at the end of this event is, look, I believe that ideas worth spreading, obviously I believe ideas worth spreading, which is the TED mission, is incredibly important. But what I would love to see is the audience from TEDWomen in 2020 go beyond spreading those ideas and actually implement the change that we need as a world, as an entire planet, to make the change that we need to make the world a better place. I feel like we are there now, as we have been for some time, and that's what I'd love to see.
The greatest hope that I have for TEDWomen 2020 is that people will walk away feeling hopeful and seeing the opportunity of how we can build forward differently. I also have great hopes that women will give ourselves permission to step forward and to be seen and have the courage to step into leadership roles.
When people sign off of TEDWomen this year, I would like them to be reminded that the conversations we have are both an asset and a liability. And the more we have thoughtful, intentional conversations, the better chance we have of building a world that we all desire and hope to live in. So the conversation and ongoing conversation that TED has is one that I think we all need to continue and remember that we're all part of this conversation that shapes our future.
Thank you to each of the TEDxWomen anchors for sharing those powerful messages about your hopes for the conference this year. I know that we also feel the same way. And for the last part of this Hangout, we'll transition to questions from TEDxers. So as I mentioned, you can ask questions for Pat and Helen, or we have some of the TEDx anchors on this call. We have Mercy from TEDx Lagos, Safra from TEDx Colombo, Grace from TEDx Montreal Women, and Kita is also on the call from TEDx Port of Spain. So if you have questions to them, feel free to float those as well. So we have a lot of questions queued up, so we'll jump right into them. So the first question we have is, what are some of the challenges you have faced while curating and producing pre-recorded TED Talks with speakers remotely? So this question is from Kiza of TEDx Nyaranga Women. And I'll pose this question to everyone, whoever would like to take this question first. And again, the question is, what are some challenges that you've faced with pre-recorded talks with speakers?
I'll jump in. And also you can always tell me not to jump in because I always have opinions. But I think the short answer is everything. The useful answer is, it's just everything from technology, like what is the quality of the phone that we can record on, or what is the technology that we're going to use? What is the bandwidth that is available? How are we going to frame this shot? You have to think about so many things when you're pre-recording, like what's in your background? Like, is this actually going to make a really beautiful shot? And then I would love to hear from some of the TEDx organizers, because I know you guys just, busted yourselves to make this happen in very difficult circumstances often. So actually I'll be quiet and I'll love to hear from you guys.
I could try. I think the equipment is one piece, but I think there's also a lot of equipment that people have that, if used creatively, can be quite powerful. So phones, cameras people have, etc. Some of the biggest challenges we had is one of our talks was in New Zealand. That was a little bit challenging to try and figure out. But I think it all comes down to planning and being very intentional about how you approach the filming of it. And I would say the hardest part for us was that we invited our speakers in February to our event, and some of them had already memorized the 15-minute talk, and getting them down to 6 to 8 minutes was difficult. And I even think in hindsight that our event was on Saturday. We should have tried for 4 to 6 minutes. But I think that was the hardest part, that getting talks down to that length. But I would say, having just had our event, it is really powerful experience of that short talks back to back and the diversity of it. So focus on diversity, focus on quality of the video stuff, and there are some really creative ways where you can use the assets people have in their homes. We used a lot of it, and we were still able to produce a really high quality event. So that'd be my contribution.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna jump from why Keita stopped. I would say that having to ensure that your talk is like 6 minutes that was like really, really interesting because, you know, I mean, just judging from talks that we've had in the past, and so it was interesting to even have to just the planning on the thought process before you even start filming. Like the intentionality of it was like so awesome, and it was so new for me. So, you know, so that was like, okay, so how do we ensure this works? How do we, you know, make sure that the script is like, you know, the talk is like on point. Like when I mean on point, like really, really like timed before we even shoot. I would say that was one challenge initially because it was very new, but like in it was huge learnings and everything. Then I would say that in the location, you know, normally when you have your events, you shoot in that, you know, you shoot on your stage, you know, you have flexibility of those things. However, just the fact that, okay, fine, it took a long time before we even decided on location for us internally as you know, as our team. And then when we ended up choosing where we're actually going to shoot it, okay, so what space will be this, what space will actually be, you know, I'm hoping that when the talks come out, this talk come out, you know, I'm hoping that the production will be really great. I would say that for me, that was like two major challenge, but it's not like, it wasn't, I would not say it was like a bad challenge. It was actually like a very good one because it was all new, you know, having to experiment on a totally different level, especially coming from a level that you're like, I thought this was actually interesting, but like, why don't you think from this perspective? And so that length of talk for me was like, if you are able to nail it early before that shoot, you can never go way above. So that was like a huge learning one for me. And I would say my team and I were very excited about that, you know, with the way the entire thing turned out. So yeah, so I would not say it was a challenge. So I think I'll stop here.
Thank you, Mercy. Yeah, those are some really great tips. And our next question here is for Caroline, actually. This is from Jamie La of TEDx Cincinnati. And the question is, how do we choose which talks to show at our TEDxWomen events and how to download them? And when will this be made available?
Happy to answer that. Also love seeing you with your family, Jair. Thank you for bringing this joy to our hangout. Okay, TEDxWomen content. So look, you have a lot of flexibility with your curation if you are organizing a TEDxWomen event this year. You really have 3 different ways that you can do it. The first way is you can curate talks for your virtual or in person if your local health guidelines allow. You can curate talks from both your local community and TEDWomen talks. The second way is to curate only your own local talks. You are allowed to do that for this activation, and you are not required to also show TED Talks. And then the opposite is also true. You can do a live stream only event where you, let's say it's virtual, you provide the hosting, you provide the platform, and you show only TEDWomen talks from the TEDWomen conference. We will provide a host kit to you this week, and we will provide all of the talks available for your download and for your use and for you to choose from on November 11th, which is 48 hours before you can host your TEDxWomen event. But as you know from the chat, you already know all of the speakers for this upcoming TEDWomen event, which are fantastic. And like I said, we'll have a host kit out this week that gives a lot of production guidelines and guidance just to support you if you're doing a virtual event, and the vast majority of you will. And it'll also have curatorial guidance so you can see what talks are coming up, and any other questions that you have, we hope to have anticipated. So I hope that answers your question, but here for anything else logistically.
Thank you, Helen. And our next question here is for Helen and Pat, and it's both a comment and a question. So this is following up on something that we talked about earlier. How do you disagree productively? So if you have any tips about how to do that, how you do that amongst your team, or how you do that on a broad scale, how do you disagree productively?
Pat, you're muted.
How did you start?
I disagree. Okay. I think it's about listening. You know, I think it's having a shared goal in mind, which for us is the best event possible. Like the event that is going to connect with our audience, the event that is going to mean the most to the people who are coming to it. And so when you're clear about what you're trying to do, that actually can take the edge out of some of the conversations. And I don't think that disagreement is something that we want to avoid at all. I think that the key is in the trick is in the productive part of it. You know, I was being a little facetious earlier when I said that Pat and I we never disagree, because we do, and it's important that we talk it out. What's terrible is and I'm British, so I'm very good at just kind of shutting down and just retreating and being kind of retreating into high dudgeon or some umbrage and then not talking it through. And thank goodness I live in America now, because America's actually taught me that it's really important to talk about things, and it's actually important to, you know, and I don't mean about my feelings, thank God. I mean, talk this through so that you can come to an agreement, you can come to an understanding or a decision that is understandable. Again, and also I think it's important to know that that doesn't mean that it has to go my way. Like the way that I think about it is that you have to disagree forcefully. You have to feel heard. And then if the decision doesn't go your way, you know that you did everything. And then you have to roll behind that decision. So there's like a kind of a whole step process to it, I think. And that's the way that I approach it, where it's not about shying away from confrontation. Although if confrontation is getting kind of ugly or personal, then I will step away from that immediately. That's not productive. That's not healthy, and that's not useful and has no place in a work context. So I don't know. Those are some of the things I think about. But Pat, what do you think?
I think just what you think. Quite seriously, Helen and I do occasionally disagree about something, and sometimes big things like a speaker choice, sometimes small things like an edit. And I would just reiterate what you said, Helen, because I think it's the number one step. Such a good question, by the way, and I'm really glad you asked it, because you can't be in a creative process without disagreement, because you're bringing in a lot of different points of view. I mean, that's the way we create things, right? But Helen said it, you have to listen. And that's really hard when you have a really strong opinion about something, to get past that moment of I'm right and actually hear the other person's reason for disagreeing. And so we've gotten really good at that. And sometimes Helen will have to say, wait a minute, let me explain to you why I'm saying this or I feel this way. And then to stop and to actually open the ears and do deep listening so that you're taking it in. And then most importantly, once a decision's made, rolling behind it, being 100% behind it, because putting a TED conference, TEDWomen, TEDx Women together requires that what we give out to our community is something we all stand behind. So standing behind that in agreement, even though it may have been a journey to get there, and it's a healthy journey if it's done productively.
Absolutely. And just along those lines, I know that this collaboration between TED and these TEDxers has been wonderful. And I just wanted to hear, since we have them on the call, we have Grace and Safra, I would love to hear from them really about what they've enjoyed most about this collaboration and the process that they've been on and the journey that they've been on alongside the TED curators. We have just about a minute left. Safra, if you want to pop on for 30 seconds, and then I'll close this out.
Sure. I think the best part is that we curated everything from day one together. We did from choosing the theme, figuring out the speakers. We had this lovely Excel sheet, which is very descriptive, and Helen just crucified it and brought it back together. So I think that—
You're welcome.
And I think through that, we really we actually learned so much from you guys as to how you actually think about your event, how you put your speakers together. And I don't think we would have learned it any other way. So that was absolutely great. And I really need to thank Karen. She has so much patience with us. She's been emailing, calling, slacking, WhatsApping, and if she could find any other way to contact us, she'll do it. And she's always a positive, like ray of energy. So I think that she definitely needs a pat on her back as well for all the work she's done tolerating the 5 of us. So yeah, along with, of course, Helen and Pat.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for being on this call today. Safra, Grace, Helen, Pat, Kita, Mercy, and Kirsty as well, who wasn't able to be here. It was great to have been able to speak with all of you. It's been a really exciting preview. I absolutely cannot wait for the conference. And remember that TEDx Women applications are still open. We floated that information in the chat, but feel free to reach out to us at TED.com with any questions. And thank you. I can't say thank you enough to all of you.
And go Bianca when you host.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.